How Uber monetizes artificial intelligence. The content for this podcast comes from my book, The Future of Everything. You can get a free copy of each of my 8 best-selling books at alexhammerbooks.com. That's AlexHammerbooks.com. How Uber monetizes artificial intelligence. Out of the 4, Google, Facebook, Amazon, and Uber, parentheses along with Amazon, has the best chance of monetizing artificial intelligence on the grandest scale. This may surprise you. Note to podcast. My last 3 podcasts focus on monetization of artificial intelligence for Google, Facebook, and Amazon, respectively. So this current podcast on Uber's AI monetization is the 4th out of 4 in this series. Due to the law of accelerating returns, the rate of change is itself increasing. One result of this is that companies can become bigger and more dominant in less time than ever before. Think for a moment about the implications of that. Just as McDonald's may be a real estate company masquerading as a food company, note the podcast, that comes from a reference to a previous podcast in my book. Parentheses, a good part of the value of McDonald's is due to its real estate holdings, and Amazon may be largely a data company masquerading as an e-commerce company. Note the podcast, see the recent podcast on Amazon. Uber could already easily be considered an AI company, parentheses, some might use the term logistics company, into parentheses, masquerading as a transportation company. I'll read that again for the podcast because it's a long sentence, but it's an important one. Uber could already easily be considered as an AI company. Some might use the term logistics company, masquerading as a transportation company. Things get very interesting as a result. Uber uses AI or logistics to run its transportation system, but the same system which applied to rides could be either applied or adapted to anything that moves. Food delivery, for example, which Uber is already involved in. If it dedicated itself to it as a priority, Uber might well deliver packages more efficiently than UPS. Note the podcast, Amazon, is a threat to UPS, but Uber could be as well. And Uber's understanding of logistics is extreme because it's a transportation company, AI-based. It might fly planes as or more efficiently than American. It might, no easy task, create autonomously driving cars as efficiently as Tesla. Note the podcast, I'm talking about Uber here. Beyond transportation, the opportunities are endless. Uber is essentially a marketplace to match buyers and sellers. So is eBay. So is Google. So is Amazon. There's no practical reason why Uber, as an AI-based company, if its AI is or becomes superior to these other companies, cannot outperform any of them in their core business. As a result, there is no technology company today that should not fear Uber as a competitor, or any company which demonstrates leading competence with AI. Although Uber has not even yet put the taxi industry out of business, they may be well on their way. The same with Airbnb with hotels, parentheses. And there is the interesting question also of whether as premier on-demand marketplaces, whether Uber and Airbnb are on the path towards future collision, even though today they're focused on separate industries. End of parentheses. Here's the real AI monetization secret. If you have superior enough intelligence, you can build anything which already exists, parentheses, as well as a lot of things which don't, end of parentheses. Note the podcast. This is critical, so I'm going to read that again. Here's the real AI monetization secret. If you have superior enough artificial intelligence, you can build anything which already exists, as well as a lot of things which don't exist. Anything. Why not? What core underlying skill set does either Google or Facebook or Amazon have that Uber, if it chose, utilizing and adapting its AI architecture, could not develop? And you thought Instagram copying Snapchat was a big deal. Uber has the additional important AI monetization advantage in that it can more easily leverage having a physical presence in the world. Can Google do that? Parentheses, autonomous car involvement notwithstanding, end of parentheses. Can Facebook do that? When the Internet of Things becomes prominent and powerful, Uber as a physical presence will have a leg up with this, which Facebook does not have. Uber that. Google was not the first engine, but is the best one so far. Facebook was not the first social network, but is the best one so far. Uber is so young, relatively speaking, and not even a public company yet. Note to podcast, obviously, Uber just went public. That it's difficult to predict its longer-term trajectory. And it faces strong, well-funded competitors in its core business, which have ganged up against it. Uber is not all-knowing. It doesn't, for example, have the information that you shared with Google or Facebook. And there's a lot else, of course, which Uber doesn't know. But when you have the best intelligent systems, then you have the best means of figuring these things out. I'll repeat that again. But when you have the best intelligent systems, then you have the best means of figuring these things out.
The podcast you just heard was made using Anchor. Ever thought about making your own podcast? Anchor makes it really easy for anyone to get started. It's a one-stop shop for recording, hosting, and distributing podcasts. Best of all, it's 100% free. Sign up now at anchor.fm/new. That's anchor.fm/new to get started.